Okay, well, hello everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. Welcome to V.A.C. Roundtable number 36. We're talking about women's health and cannabis. We're joined by guests Dr. Bridget Williams and Danielle Simone Brand. Um, and one moment, just get this set going. And we're good to go. We're talking specifically today about women's health and cannabis. And starting off is Dr. Bridget Williams is an established board-certified family physician, best-selling author, and CEO of Green Harvest Health, medical cannabis and integrative clinics located in Ohio. With nearly 20 years of experience in family medicine from the Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Bridget combines her medical background with certifications in life and cannabis coaching in her practice. She provides valuable medical motivational talks on cannabis, CBD, life balance, and confidence. In 2019, Dr. Bridget branched out into developing her line of CBD products and CBD product development for developing businesses. When not seeing patients, Dr. Bridget hosts podcast shows, creates educational videos for the Cannabis Hub, and holds an advisory and curriculum development position with the Cleveland School of Cannabis. Dr. Williams is a founder of the nonprofit GHH Community Foundation and nonprofit, the Cannabis Can Project. Dr. Williams is honored to be a top female business and top minority business with the Ohio MBE, awarded 2021. Women in Medicine Top Doctor for 2021 and Top 100 Entrepreneurs of 2022. Next is Danielle Simone Brand, is a freelance writer and author of Weed Mom, the Canna Curious Women's Guide to Healthier Relaxation, Happier Parenting, and Chilling the Fuck Out. A few years ago, she wouldn't have self-described as a weed mom, but she's found her sparkle in writing about cannabis to inform and uplift, and occasionally challenge her readers while helping push the conversation forward. Her articles have appeared in numerous publications, including the New York Times, The Week, Civilized, Vice, Double Blind, What's Up Moms, and Scary Mommy. She holds a BA from Dartmouth College and an MA from American University. She has worked as a yoga teacher and trainer, a staff writer, and a researcher on issues of international conflict resolution. Danielle lives in the Northwest with her family and her Barky Terrier, which we may hear today. So, starting off our conversation, thank you for joining us tonight, ladies. How did you each get into this field? And we'll start with you, Dr. Williams.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me today. So I went from traditional medicine, which I still do family medicine, but I went from traditional medicine into the cannabis space really because I had a patient 15 years ago that was fed up with traditional medicine as I was. And for every patient, there is a diagnosis, and for every diagnosis, there's a pill. And if you don't like the pill, there's another one. And we were frustrated. She mentioned cannabis as an option as I was helping her get off of other medications. And I thought she was nuts in the moment. I did research and was blown away by what was the medicinal possibility. And so I took her on, and she was making edibles and smoking, and I was finding out about dosing and titration, and I saw her health transform in front of my eyes. And from there, I was in. So from that moment, which it was slightly illegal, fast forward 15 years and it became legal in Ohio, I wanted to be a part of it. And so I developed my own offices that focus not just on cannabis and treatment, but life coaching as well.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. And next, Danielle.
So yeah, I tell the story in my book about how I really went from a cannabis skeptic to an enthusiast and an advocate and a writer. And I did that by, coming through the intellectual route, actually. So first, I had stereotypes and stigmas about cannabis, and I didn't really appreciate it. And I saw my husband actually kind of leaning on it a bit too much, probably for his mental health, when he could have been using an array of tools, including cannabis. And so I had some, kind of misconceptions and stereotypes about it for a long time. It wasn't until I was a mother of two in my mid 30s, kind of just going about my life, trying to figure out, how to balance life and work and, kids and all the things that, modern mothers do. And, I realized that, so back up, I was actually transitioning in my career into freelance writing at that point. So I had been in academia, and then I had been in health and wellness, and I was really honing my skills at becoming a freelance writer. And I got a bunch of assignments in cannabis before I even cared. I didn't give a damn about it yet. And through that process, that intellectual process of learning about cannabis and then interviewing people who had been helped, I realized, I'd been missing the boat. There was actually a lot more to this plant. And so, I went down the route of learning and interviewing and writing and then experimenting myself. And once I really did embrace cannabis as a wellness tool, it transformed so many things about my life. And I realized, other moms can use this, and we need to talk about this more. And the stigmas are there, but there's so much benefit here. So that's how, I really started gearing my writing toward women and moms.
Thank you for that. We will go to Council Member Tony Landry for the next question.
Okay. Thank you for being here, Dr. Williams. My question to you is, why is it important for mothers to know about cannabis, and how can it help them and the world?
Sorry there. So it's really important, I think, obviously for not just women, but men and the country, the world really needs to have a better understanding of what cannabis provides. It has been a medicinal tool from the beginning of time, and somehow we've kind of lost track of that. But I would say for all of the conditions that cannabis is able to help, the majority of people come in for pain, they come in for anxiety, and they come in for sleep. And so regardless of whether it's cancer or sickle cell, Tourette syndrome, fibromyalgia, for all the conditions, PTSD, that cannabis can have incredible benefit for, the majority of people still come to me because they're trying to do three things: get out of pain, decrease their anxiety, and sleep better. And not only is this cannabis a great option for this, but it provides help with fewer side effects. It provides help without causing liver damage, gastric issues, or kidney damage. And for a lot of people, they have run out of possible medicinal options because of the damage that other medications have done. And on top of that, there's a lot of confusion about using cannabis and the negativity of being high, which that's a whole discussion in itself and needs to be clarified. But you can use cannabis and never be high. I have patients I've been treating for 4 years and never been high one day. So there's a way to use cannabis in a way that empowers people and the way that works for them without causing more side effects and more issues.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. That was a wonderful explanation. I appreciate that. Okay, now I'm going to restate the question for Danielle. Danielle, why is it important for mothers to know about cannabis, and how can it help them and the world?
Yeah. So, echoing very much what Dr. Williams just said, cannabis can help women and moms on so many levels, so many ways. Women I talk to for my book and now, speak to as I continue cannabis journalism, tell me that it helps them with sleep, with pain, with mental health, dealing with other depression, anxiety, PTSD. Women tell me that it helps them show up better for their roles in life. And to me, a mother that is healthy, happy, fulfilled is going to parent, in a way that is much more effective, right? And so that's good for families as well. I also, beyond the consumption question, and obviously there's of course medical uses that, that's huge. And that's, I leave that to Dr. Williams. But, beyond even the consumption aspect of it, it's a plant that can help solve the climate crisis. Like, it's not going to do everything all by itself, but I believe that cannabis can really help us in so many ways, from carbon sequestration to materials, being able to make things, that are biodegradable out of hemp. So I think that's something that we can all get behind in order to, to push this environmental question forward. And then also, I think it's a potential business opportunity. And that's a cool thing too, for small entrepreneurs, for moms, for maybe stay-at-home moms who need, some side income and they love cannabis, all the way, from those small fries to women who are CEOs and, running big MSOs in cannabis. I just think that this is an opportunity for women to really step up and be part of this new industry that's emerging.
Thank you for that. Next up is Michael Green. Michael? You are on mute, sir.
Okay, I'm unmuted. I'm sorry. My a storm popped up, wiped out the internet, so I went to the phone. My question to you, Dr. Williams, and, Danielle, how does cannabis affect our sleep, our ability to sleep comfortably?
So yes, so like I said, that's one of the number one reasons people come in to see us, is that whether it is stress or pain or what have you, people have a lot of difficulty sleeping. And cannabis can be incredibly effective in this area, number one, because it works with our circadian rhythms in such an incredible way. Whether it is using CBD, adding THC that can help people feel a little bit more tired. But CBN is another cannabinoid, which is actually aged THC. So I like to think of it as the finer wine of THC, that actually, in combination with THC, can make people rest well. And so basically, by interacting with our natural endocannabinoid system and interacting with our circadian system that allows us to sleep and puts our brain into a space that allows us to rest, we get better sleep. And part of it is that it also decreases anxiety that keeps people up. It decreases pain that keeps people up, and it puts our brain into a place that allows us to have better rest.
Did you want to speak to that as well, Danielle?
Well, I am not going to be able to add to the medical side of that at all. But what I will say is that, sleep is across age ranges of people that I talk to is a really common reason that people come to cannabis. For even, younger folks who you don't necessarily think would have trouble sleeping, they do too. Like we, and women with mothers, especially, it was women who are mothers, especially in the early years, and then like transitioning from the early years into kind of the middle years of parenting, lots of sleep disturbances can come up. And so that's a need that I see across all different age ranges. And I also see that people are coming to the marketplace for these, kind of wellness reasons. Like maybe that would be, something they would go see a doctor for, but maybe not. Maybe they would just try to self-treat it at home with, some various herbs, melatonin, et cetera. And now they're learning that cannabis is another alternative, another way to, pretty safely, naturally at home treat these things like sleep, disturbance or insomnia. So, I'm from a health empowerment perspective, I'm actually really happy to see that. I mean, I love to see doctors, patients partnering with their doctors, and I want to see more doctors who are into it, like Dr. Williams, obviously, but for so many folks, it's a DIY thing right now. But I do find that that's it's a really common thing that people come to cannabis for too.
If I could just add to that, I love, Danielle, that you brought up that even for different ages, right? Because I feel that, I feel like our young people are in a space that I don't think many of us we really realize. I think they have bigger pressures. I've seen more teens with difficulty sleeping than I ever remember in my youth. And so, though I don't first and foremost recommend THC to teenagers, I do recommend this as CBD as an option to help them with sleep and really kind of get their endocannabinoid system working in a way that allows them to rest better. And I think this is something that we need to have more discussions about when we're talking about our youth, because they very easily, a lot of physicians are putting some of our youth on really strong sleep medications. And if we can pull back from that and start with CBD as an option, I think we can avoid some of the drug issues that we sometimes see later on.
I agree and concur. It was rather fascinating. I've been in the medical cannabis dispensary uh, game for 22 plus years, and for the first 18 years, we were seeing individual patients. The fascinating thing was in 2018 with the passage of Prop 64, we saw groups of people come. So many groups of people were coming, we had lines around the block. And so I would take off my badge, get a timer, and go to the back of the line, and then time how long it would take to go through the line. So I would engage with the people who were in front of me, and 90+% of them were older women of retirement age who were looking for THC and CBD combinations in pens specifically for sleep because of inability to maintain a full night's sleep, inability to get to sleep, and then, of course, to stay asleep. So that was one very fascinating to me to see the demographic, especially of retired people who were doing so specifically as they were stating, I no longer have to piss test. And so that was a significant reason why, with the law change, they felt more empowered to use it. But I found it rather fascinating that they were coming to look for THC and CBD in combination with each other. Now, doctor, I would like to kind of a follow up on this discussion regarding CBD and sleep. Many of my patients have stated, depending on the dosage of CBD, when they're taking CBD for sleep versus THC, especially for veterans, have much more vivid dreams. Memorable ability to remember the dreams, but especially much significantly more vivid dreams. Now, I have recommended strictly THC for those patients to subside from that effect. So I would like you to speak toward that. And am I offering the right solution to that problem?
Absolutely. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because when I first got into the cannabis space, there was a lot of talk for PTSD. You want high CBD regimens. You don't want to introduce a lot of THC. And then I was coming across actual veterans that were using more THC. And the more research that I was doing, what I found was that, yes, CBD is incredible for anxiety and calming and just kind of balancing our systems. However, if you're talking about those night terrors, if you're talking about those difficulties that people are having with sleep itself, THC is going to control that REM sleep that causes some of those night terrors. CBD is not going to do that. CBD probably will give you, in your average person, you're still retaining a lot of your dream life for people that do remember it. But for a veteran or for someone that has severe PTSD, that's not necessarily a good thing. And THC will knock out some of that intense anxiety that happens very quickly, faster than CBD does. So with my veterans or with my patients that have severe PTSD, I do look for combinations that work for their lifestyle is probably the way I look at it more than anything. What are you doing during the day? What are your responsibilities? What type of combinations do we need to do? But if you have difficulty sleeping, if you have night terrors in particularly, that's when we're getting that THC in there to hopefully get you better rest.
Excellent. Yeah, and that's something I have been recommending. So it's good to know that my instincts seem to be on the right plane there, because we've had to do this specifically by anecdotal situations until science catches up. And as you're well aware, doctor, science has not caught up and has a long way to go. But there is valid science that does substantiate that. And I look forward to seeing further studies on that can actually back this up and give some validity toward the theorem itself. Next up is Council Member Wade Laughter with the next question. Council Member Laughter.
Yes, I want to thank you both for joining us today. I it's kind of a difficult, a delicate question, if you will. One of the challenges that women face in our culture today is when they get pregnant, that they decide they want to have a child. And particularly in the context of using cannabis as a mom, there's a lot of pressure and a lot of science that I think is somewhat faulty science being done trying to prove how bad cannabis is for fetuses and young children. And you might be aware of this, Dr. Williams. I want to call you out specifically. I'm aware of some of your work helping to normalize cannabis and the Cleveland Clinic there. Good work. Thank you. Again, I was aware of a longitudinal study done in Jamaica, and I can't remember the lead researcher, but she followed a number of mothers who were regular cannabis users as well as non-cannabis users in the same, she tried to sort out for all the variables that she could eliminate, and generally found long-term benefit for mothers who were using cannabis. And yet, of course, when you're trying to do randomized clinical studies, it's really hard to nail it down. So I would like to just ask both of you, you could almost say anecdotally, or certainly Dr. Williams, if you want to point to additional research or talk more about that study in Jamaica. But yeah, what is your take on the use of cannabis by pregnant women and the use of cannabis when they are lactating and nursing their children, particularly in the light of the quote unquote formula shortage that we're experiencing right now?
Absolutely.
And I'll stop there. Thank you, Dr. Williams.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Gosh, you're right. This is the hot potato seat, right? When we're talking about cannabis and pregnancy, women are very careful and defensive about this. And I'm also very respectful of it as well, because I definitely understand the difficulties. You're totally correct when it comes to, there's research all over the place with this. I've seen research, actually a British study from 2002 that found that there was no significant differences with women that were using cannabis as far as growth or controlling any other compounding factors. I've also seen studies as early as 2017 where they said that using cannabis and particularly THC caused low birth weight, reduction in head circumference, cognitive difficulties, what have you. So we don't know is my answer. Okay. Now, how do we tend to err on the side of being careful? I know the biggest thing that was a concern when I was pregnant is people giving me a really hard time for eating a hot dog because it had nitrates, and oh my God, you're ruining your child, and we know that alcohol is a big issue, and we do have the evidence for alcohol. So when we know, we know. I will say with cannabis, we don't know. I tend to err on the side of always being careful. And with pharmaceuticals, we put medications into categories, right? And so there's category B, which is considered safe. We look at Tylenol in this way. If you have issues, pain, what have you, take Tylenol, no issues. Other medications then go into category C, which means that we're not quite sure if it's harmful or not, so use sparingly. And then category D, where there's more significant evidence that there might be some issue. I personally put cannabis in C, maybe D, maybe, okay? Meaning if there is a need, severe nausea, severe pain and Tylenol doesn't work, what have you, then use it sparingly. So for instance, when I was pregnant, I had the worst sinuses on the planet. I had my head over boiling pots of hot water and, everything I could possibly do. But when it got to the worst of it, I used Sudafed, category C. Did I use it every day? No. Did I use it when nothing else would work? Yes. That's why I see cannabis in pregnancy, because literally you want to keep your pregnancy as clean as possible. That's just the way we see it, definitely, at least in the US, right? So use it sparingly if needed at all is the way that I look at it. And we simply, and until we have more information, that is the best way to approach this. The same thing with lactation, yet your fetus develops an endocannabinoid system in utero, right? You have anandamides, you have 2-AG. Is the fetal brain ready for THC is the question, right? So just because we have anandamide, which is anandamide and THC are extremely similar, does it mean that the fetal brain is ready? And so again, I err on the side of caution. Do I judge women that choose to use some cannabis? I do not. If your lactation nurse or your doctor, if you pee dirty, are they calling CPS and saying you're endangering your child? Probably. And my recommendation that I've talked to lactation nurses and physicians about this, before you make that phone call, ask why. No, doing a dirty urine test really doesn't tell you how much. Ask how much and why. Make sure there's education, because before you really put this family in a horrible situation with CPS, make sure you know what is going on and can you advise them in a way that could make a difference before you put them into the system.
Now, I'm going to kind of quick follow up here because I know friends who have chosen to use cannabis during their pregnancy and to bearing of child. And they have gone the way of using midwives and midwifery because of that issue with CPS, which is Child Protective Services for those who are unaware, which is a huge problem for any parent and a fear as well. So, would you recommend then, if you are exploring the route of using cannabis because of your medical condition, would you recommend them using midwives as opposed to conventional doctors?
So first of all, I love midwives. And I love, women were having babies in fields long before we had fancy, delivery rooms and what have you. Before, I can't really say I would advise, because women in pregnancies are every single one is so unique, right? And so if you're having high risk pregnancies, I'm not going to necessarily recommend that right off the bat, because the midwives that I know also work with physicians for high risk pregnancies and choose that route. My answer is, and like I said, I love midwives. I would rather to see laws change than say, don't go to your doctor. Right? I think we need to grow in how we treat women in pregnancy, and that women need more protection and more, think about everything we're doing around abortion right now, right? We need to have laws that protect us in our bodies, and that includes even more the pregnant woman. So that is probably my focus more than anything. Because I'm not going to say don't go and see your doctor, but do I love to have midwives on? And, I'm a family doctor. So before I walked away from, every aspect of it, I was delivering babies at one point. I love working with midwives and I love this natural aspect of it. I love better communication, but if communication is not safe, let's change the laws.
Great point. Danielle, did you want to speak on this issue?
Yeah, I would. So this is probably the most common, these two are the most common questions that I get in my DMs on social media. And part of me is like, I wish these folks had someone they could consult with, a cannabis trained nurse or doctor, right? And I do point them in directions, toward resources. But, what I have to answer is the same as what Dr. Williams said. We cannot, we just don't know enough at this point, right? But the truth is that women are consuming cannabis in pregnancy, with or without the official sanction. But at the same, I have tons of conversations, every week I have at least 2 public conversations with, canna moms, one on Clubhouse and one on an app called Relevant. And we talk about all these kinds of issues. And none of these moms are saying, I'm just recreationally like taking bong rips when I'm pregnant because it's fun. Like no one is saying that. They're saying it helps me with, nausea. It helps me with pain so that I can actually like run after my toddler while I'm pregnant, things like that. They're using it medicinally and mindfully. And I'm not saying, overuse doesn't happen or abuse doesn't happen. But, for the most part, women are looking to cannabis as a wellness boost and not just like a way to, to numb out when they're pregnant. There's lots of different uses for the plant, and, I'm not opposed to just chilling the F out, but, obviously pregnancy is a different situation. And so, so that's what I'm hearing, and that's what I'm seeing out in the community. And a lot of women are feeling like the bigger risk to them and to their babies is CPS, as was stated earlier. Yeah. So we're still in a really precarious situation when it comes to that, and, use a lot of caution, I would say.
The laws are.
The one thing I would add is that even the research is showing that more and more women are using cannabis during pregnancy. So this isn't an anomaly. And, as Danielle is saying that, she is seeing this, people are talking about this. I have people talk to me about it. More women are using it. They don't necessarily, if we want clean pregnancies, for many people, a clean pregnancy is not taking a pharmaceutical. It would be taking a plant-based medicine, right? So we need to acknowledge the fact that more women are using it. I think 21% of women right now, if pregnant, are choosing cannabis as one of their options. So we need to realize what is actually happening and what the traditional medical community wants to happen, and meet somewhere in the middle there and protect the women that are pregnant.
Wow, that is fascinating, that around 21%, and that's just who are reporting, so it's probably slightly higher than that, knowing how people are when they're trying to speak truthfully in drug interactions. It seems Michael Green has a follow-up. Councilmember Green.
Thank you. Actually, two things. Number one, and I keep falling in and out because of the weather here, but I believe it was Melanie Dreyer that conducted that. That was the Jamaican research. And secondly, based on what your last two comments, Bridget and Danielle, would you propose any kind of research modality where we could acquire this data information on women using cannabis 21% or more during pregnancy? What would you recommend, your recommendations of how we could get clinical trials as well as anecdotal information?
Well, I would say, first of all, I mean, there are two research studies that we're talking about. We're talking about cannabis use in pregnant women, and we're talking about what are the outcomes on these children. So that's a long-term longitudinal study, right? Because you don't know what the real outcome is with these infants until, we have more longitudinal studies. And I hope that some of this is going on currently, and I hope that we can do more in the future. As far as cannabis use, I want to say that the study that I was referring to was like 2014. And so think about where we were with cannabis in this country, 2014, versus how many states have medical cannabis as options now. And so we need to have more updated studies just to see what the use is, because if we can get those numbers out there, it is undeniable that we need to have more education for child protection services, for nurses, for doctors, and to really understand what should we do. There's so much emotional changes and pressure pregnant women are under to behave and do a certain way. And and the way society judges us, we need more information that supports pregnant women and what they experience, and less judgment and rules that narrow down their options.
And very apt considering the situation that we're currently looking at legally. Councilmember Pearson Kennedy Crosby has a follow-up as well.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief with this. Thank you for being here. So my better half, Megan, she was told by her midwife that a glass of wine would be okay every once in a while. Is that something that cannabis could counteract? Because I for one think that cannabis is much safer than alcohol. If you have any insight on that, it'd be great.
So counteract, I mean, do you mean, is it better to use cannabis over
Well,
alcohol, or what do you mean by counteract?
she was told she had high blood pressure while she was pregnant. And the midwife instructed her to have a glass of wine every once in a while if she felt the blood pressure cuff was saying that she had high, that it was high. Could cannabis help with that by any chance?
You know, the verdict is still really out when we talk about cannabis and blood pressure, simply because there's so much variance throughout the day for every individual, and you need continuous medication on board to address blood pressure, right? So that's why, you know, and if we're talking about pregnancy specifically, high blood pressure in pregnancy can be incredibly dangerous for the mother as well as for the baby. So this is where we're getting into a very specific realm that even with my regular cannabis patients, I tend to err on the side of pharmaceuticals, only because the variance throughout the day and the severity of elevated blood pressure can be so bad that, and it's worse in pregnant women than it can be in your average, you know, individual. And we don't have a dosage that can really say it addresses this blood pressure at this level. So I understand the glass of wine for relaxation, because to be honest, a lot of blood pressure in this country has to do with high stress living and behavior. Do I think cannabis is safer than alcohol during pregnancy? Yeah, I do. The outcome, the likelihood of addiction, and how that can escalate for someone. You don't want that during pregnancy. And again, I'm not chastising the occasional glass of wine even during pregnancy. Like I said, we want clean pregnancies as much as possible. So I don't know if I'm really answering your question or not. Is a little cannabis okay? A little temperance is the word at the end of the day. A little bit of everything probably isn't going to kill you, and it's probably not going to do great harm. A lot of anything can cause a lot of harm, particularly during pregnancy. So that's number one. I don't care if it's pharmaceuticals. A lot of anything is going to be the problem. So I don't know. Does that help at all?
Absolutely. I think it's just cannabis hasn't been had the ability to be tested during pregnancies and stuff like that. Whether or not it helped, it helped her. Odin turned out all right so far.
Yeah,
but
I mean, it just it's a very unique situation. I would say if that is the road that you're going down, then monitoring that blood pressure and making sure that it is actually coming down is really important. Yeah.
Okay. Well, and she has to live with a Marine also, so that's terribly hard on anybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Pearson. We're going to go next to Council Member Gage Amsler. Gage, go ahead, sir.
Unmute myself. So actually, I think we kind of already segued into this question. You know, I've been a medic for over 30 years. I was an SF medic. I was a firefighter. You know, so and after 8 years of war, I definitely had my bouts with alcohol and pharmaceuticals on both sides. You know, so I understand the effects of preeclampsia and using, you know, petroleum-based pharmaceuticals to help, you know, with severe blood pressure. I understand that, because, you know, maybe how much cannabis do you need to really hit that level, right? You know, so I understand that, you know, that's a lot of studies. So we're not there yet, right? I get that. But you know, choosing cannabis over alcohol, I mean, you know, one of the benefits, you know, I mean, we could probably, many of us can say to that, but to both of you, actually, I mean, you know, thank you for being here and doing what you do in your professions and pioneering what you're doing. It's wonderful. And I think that, but no, I really would like to know, what are the benefits over alcohol? People go to alcohol, it's understood, it's poor, it's terrible that we're in a nation of stress constantly and anxiety and all that. And we're constantly putting band-aids on it. I mean, I'm a root cause person, I'd rather go to the beginning. Why is this happening nationwide in the beginning? But if we have to put band-aids on it, and many people go to alcohol, that's the old true. But what are the benefits of choosing cannabis over alcohol? Not just mentally, but physically as well. And then on top of that, of course, pharmaceuticals. You already answered the blood pressure thing. I get that. But even other pharmaceuticals too. I mean, I was talking again to Pat King, and when he was here, and he was talking about petroleum-based pharmaceuticals and how that's such an issue today over organics. And even putting what we put into our cannabis. Putting between petroleum-based nutrients. As opposed to or clean nutrients. So. But what is the benefits of cannabis over alcohol and pharmaceuticals?
Absolutely. So I'll keep that's a lecture all by itself, right? The one thing I will say to really keep it simple, alcohol is a poison. It's a toxin. Okay. Cannabis is not. And so that in itself, obviously, alcohol causes fetal alcohol syndrome. We have incredible studies and we've seen the horrible outcomes that chronic alcohol use during pregnancy will cause for an infant and long term for the rest of their lives, right? We don't really have solid information regarding that with cannabis, but at the end of the day, cannabis works with it works with your endocannabinoid system. It complements your endocannabinoid system to be able to affect and balance every aspect of your body. So it works with your immune system. It's working with every organ in your system. It brings about positive results in every aspect. Alcohol is a poison. It's a toxin. We are a drinking drunk country, without a doubt. And probably the best way to get more cannabis use as normalizing in our country will be through cannabis beverages, because grandma can sit with a drink and nobody cares, but let grandma light up a bong and the world will end, right? Exactly, right? So I think, there's so can red wine help your blood pressure a little bit? Sure, it can help a little bit, but they're not comparable, I think is my best answer. They're just not even comparable by any means.
100% right. I mean, I absolutely 100% agree. And Danielle, I understand, and even on your side, on the mom side, and it's very subjective, right? But I hear moms say this and moms say that, so it is very subjective. But and you kind of mentioned this before, the difference with using alcohol over that. I mean, are they combining it? Are you seeing a lot of moms combining alcohol and cannabis more? Or are they starting to teeter? Or are they starting to titrate themselves more towards cannabis? I'd like to understand that.
Okay, so this is not like officially sanctioned research that I did, but I did a survey when I was writing my book, because I had talked to so many women who had told me things like, they had given up alcohol or just really reduced alcohol since cannabis came into their lives. And so I did a survey and found that the vast majority of women who found cannabis as a mother were like reducing or eliminating alcohol. And they gave me all kinds of reasons, just physiologically, they felt so much better with cannabis instead of alcohol. They told me that they didn't feel, that spike in blood sugar, that, bloated feeling, that, hangover, fogginess, headache stuff the next day. So like a very short period of relaxation with alcohol is often followed by kind of a long period of feeling crappy, for a lot of people. And that truly isn't the case with cannabis. Like, you can consume cannabis to nourish your endocannabinoid system, bring yourself up a little bit, feel better, and then feel normal afterwards. Just feel like yourself afterwards. And I think that's really a boon, and for women, for moms, for anybody really, you know, for vets, absolutely. Like nobody has time to sit around and feel bad because they were trying to make themselves feel good earlier, right? It just doesn't make any sense. So you mean actually in my book, I know Michael might want to bring this up, but in my book, the very first, the preface is "Dear Alcohol, we're breaking up." And because that is my experience too. It's just, it was a no-brainer. It wasn't ever like I need to quit alcohol and I'm choosing to set it aside. It was just like a gradual shift that made so much more sense and felt so much better in my body.
Absolutely. And yeah, well, the biggest problem, as we've seen, is, you know, is the laws, you know, and of course the difference between, I think, alcohol and cannabis is the ability for cannabis to stay and store itself in the blood system, whereas the easier use for people, or a consideration, has been alcohol because it is flushed through the system quite quickly. Michael Green, you wanted to have a follow-up, sir?
I did, and I actually, Simone just beat me to the punch. You know, I curate the books that I make available on my website, Cannabis Libris. When I first came on to Weed Mom, first thing I read was her preface, and it's this wonderful lyrical breakup letter with alcohol, setting the tone and the stage for what came next in her book. And I've truly would recommend someone give that a read, and then check out the book. But it was amazing, set the whole tone. So thank you for that, Danielle. That's what.
All right. So next would be Michael Crowitz, council member.
Thank you, Etienne. So this is a question that it seems to get more interesting all the time. When we, I like to joke that back in the day, cannabis, enthusiasts or medical cannabis users had two choices. They had the good cannabis and the bad cannabis. That was the amount of the choices you had. And now you have, I don't know, 80, 90 choices, honest choices. And even some of those break out into, subsets of choices in terms of dose and stuff. So, what are a couple of the top ways that you see women and mothers tending to consume cannabis now?
So I think I was actually a little surprised by this, right? So number one, the main ways that women tend to consume cannabis are gummies, vape cartridges, and topicals. And that in itself wasn't surprising. I think what got me was coming before there was COVID, believe it or not, right? There was a time before, we were talking a lot about lipoid pneumonia, where people that were using vape cartridges were getting very, very ill and dying sometimes because if they were getting street ones or ones that had been contaminated with vitamin E, they were actually dying from lipoid pneumonia. This was a huge thing. There was a lot of coverage about it. Then COVID happened. And it's almost like it disappeared. I think partly it's because we didn't know what the source was. And once we figured it out, I think we were able to get rid of that quite a bit. And with more testing, which I'm hoping is happening more and more, people were able to identify it. So when I started seeing patients around this time, I was surprised how many of my elderly women were very much into vape cartridges. And I thought, because at one point I had to explain it a lot. No, it's been tested. It is safe. It's easy to use. You don't have to worry about it. And I had, at one point I had a lot of kickback, and eventually they were requesting that I recommend vape cartridges. But I think it was, first of all, it wasn't hitting them in the face in the news anymore. And so people kind of forgot some of the issues that had happened, and you can't deny the ease of it without a doubt. And women tend to go for something that is discreet and easy to obtain and use. And edibles do that. Gummies come in these nice little easy, already set sizes and packages. The vape cartridges don't require a wonderful skill set of the grinder and the rolling and, everything in between. And for those that are sometimes even apprehensive, topicals are a great place to start. So without a doubt.
And the moms?
Yes, absolutely. So, I kind of can separate categories just a little bit between sort of OG canna moms, women who have been consuming for a long time, and the newbies who are coming in now with the legal marketplace. And so generally speaking, it seems like the women who've been exposed to cannabis a lot longer, they tend towards the flower and the homemade edibles and things like that, because that was the only thing that was available for a long time. And also, many people feel like that gives them the most, benefit, is just, smoking or vaporizing flower. I'm also not a big fan of vape cartridges, but that is an easy entry. And that is honestly how I first started my cannabis journey, because I didn't want to fuss with all the things that I didn't understand yet. Once I got a little taste of it, then I realized that I actually wanted a relationship with flower, and I love to handle it and smell it and get the terpenes and, and to smoke it now. But, easy entry is important. And I think now with the legal marketplace in so many states, there's just, there are products that are more appealing to women, like Dr. Williams, I'm sorry, was saying. There are the microdosed edibles. There's more and more beverages coming on the market all the time, including faster acting ones that actually feel more like the onset of alcohol. Things like that just this diversity of products and this, precisely dosed and more sort of accountability for the products. It does bring in more women and more curious people, more canna curious people.
Right on. Thank you very much. Next question is, what are the reasons women and especially veterans are consuming cannabis, and how are you finding it's helping them? Dr. Williams, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so gosh, my veteran population is so near and dear to my heart. I number one, my very first patient that walked through the door was a veteran. This was during December, and he was all set because he also played Santa. So it's like this, mythical image walked in, and I started this great relationship with him. And he also taught me so much in that first year that we had opened. So a lot of my and I think this is really an important point. My veterans use cannabis to feel normal, period. It's people, I think, assume if you're using cannabis, you're getting high, and that you're walking around in this, psychedelic cloud of some sort. Most of my veterans use cannabis to feel normal. Now, what normal is going to be different for you than it is for me and what have you. But it's for my veterans, it's not so much about the high, it's about functioning. It's about being able to interact. It's about being able to sleep. It's just about feeling normal. And so that they can actually work and have relationships with their family members and their children. It is, and I think it's so overlooked and such a shame how something that is so simple has been really inaccessible legally for veterans for such a long time. But at the end of the day, it's about feeling normal for so many people.
And you're one of the few doctors that actually understand and recognize that. And I wish that many of the doctors in the VA system were as educated as you on the system. Just to give you an example, Dr. Williams, I mentioned my cannabis use in 4 different VA facilities and was diagnosed as a known drug user back in the 90s. And then security was called and I was escorted off the premises. So one of the reasons I created and worked with patients at Berkeley Patients Group was to create a safe place where no one would have to feel that shame of that stigma, which is a reality that comes with it. I'm gonna kind of delve deep into this question here because this is one council member Amy wanted to ask, but she has not been able to make it. So this one is a specific one around women's health. Thoughts on cannabis suppositories vaginally for dysmenorrhea or painful menstruation? Are there studies to support these issues concerning women? I asked that one because I'm the youngest of 13 and I have 8 sisters. And one of my sisters has absolutely bed-bound by her PMS, and especially during her menstruation, is so heavy and painful. She had to be regulated using specifically, she had to go on the pill for it at the age of 16, etc. So this is a reality that, and it's I kind of asked this follow up there because asking about suppositories, because the most that women see specifically for them are the sexual pleasure products that are on the market. And are we doing enough to support the endocannabinoid system in women's health and to promote these types of studies so that we can have more holistic products as opposed to just these sexual gizmos, quote unquote? So I'll start with Dr. Williams, then we'll go to you, Danielle.
So are we doing, no, we're not doing enough. And you're not really going to probably see as much as we should until the pharmaceutical companies that are making a whole lot of synthetic options currently, they're right on our heels, creating all sorts of synthetic options around this, which I'm not the biggest fan of because no synthetic has ever measured up to a natural plant, period. Okay. The other aspect of this, and I'm all about the CBD and THC and what have you, but some of our minor cannabinoids are phenomenal in this area. And so if we're looking at CBG and CBN and some of these other cannabinoids, they actually complement, if not surpass, the ability of COX-2 inhibitors as far as being an anti-inflammatory and decreasing pain. So COX-2 inhibitors, people are familiar with like Celebrex, Mobix, some of those are a different category of anti-inflammatories than your Motrin and Aleve and some of these other ones, right? And so they're like the more higher powered ones that physicians usually put you on when the other anti-inflammatories don't work. So we need to not just make another CBD product and another THC product, but we need to make, and I'm all about the isolates and kind of reformulating, and I'm a terpene nut, so throw that in there as well because they're incredible for pain and inflammation. But we need to look at some of these other minor cannabinoids and create products for women that help in that way. I think suppositories, I don't think in the state of Ohio, we can have THC suppositories even. And so we need to get that available. We need to have this medicinal. The states get so excited about the money that starts rolling in and that they want to just be medicinal, but they only really allow more and more THC products because that's where the money is. We need to think medicinally and make sure that women and our medical patients have medical options that help. And that means suppositories need to be more available, as well as more and more minor cannabinoids that can make a huge difference.
So a kind of a cocktail suppository in that sense. So excellent. Danielle.
Yeah, so I've even had a chance to review some of these products, suppositories, and the really interesting. I do think that, as Dr. Felicia Dawson sometimes says, the marketing is way out ahead of the science, right? In so many of these things, but I think that there is a really interesting place for this. And with women that I talked to for my chapter in the book on sexual health, it was pretty evenly divided between women who were saying that cannabis helps them in some way, either recover from or with pain, or just it helped them recover from pain, or it helped them enhance sensation. So those were two different things, but they're also related. So sexual wellness is part of health, I believe, absolutely. And people have a right to, women have a right to feel good about their bodies and about their whole reproductive system. And I'm finding that women are sometimes even just formulating suppositories at home using CBD, using THC. Also, interestingly, since I wrote the book, it does seem, so I wrote in the book that suppositories containing THC probably won't have an effect on, won't get you high, basically won't be psychoactive. Now, I don't think that's true anymore. It seems like more and more people are saying that with the right dose, vaginal application of THC actually can be psychoactive. So I find that actually really interesting. We have endocannabinoid systems all through the reproductive tract. We have endocannabinoid receptors all through the reproductive tract. So I find that super, super interesting. And I think maybe this is a little bit woo-woo or whatever, but I do think that women have a special relationship with this plant. You know, the flowers are female after all, right? You know, men have a wonderful relationship with the plant too. But you know, that there is something really special about a woman's body and this plant. That's just my belief.
Dr. Williams, did you want to follow up there?
No, I agree. And I do think that as far what makes a suppository psychoactive is where it hits the bloodstream, right? And if it's able to be absorbed into where it's actually venously going back and getting it to our brain, then we have the psychoactive ability. If it ends up hitting the bloodstream and actually kind of either staying locally or into more of an arterial tract where it does not get a chance to get back to the brain, then that's where, or it's metabolized before it gets back to the brain. That's really what the difference ends up being. We see that definitely with suppositories in the rectal system, without a doubt. Placement is everything. And so if it's a little bit higher up, it's going to hit your brain. If it's a little bit lower down, it won't. It's just really where it's located and what system that it ends up being absorbed into.
Now, I'm going to ask a kind of an obscure question here, because I know that when you ingest cannabis orally, it can turn to alexihydroxy metabolite when it goes through the liver. Is that the same? Can you get that same absorption vaginally or anally that gets that same effect, or is it a different effect than the alexihydroxy metabolite, which tends to be psychoactive for people?
Right. So, okay, so delta 9 THC is what we're used to when we inhale. It's what we get the majority of in our topicals and, you know, other preparations. When it goes through the liver, when it's metabolized through the liver, is where we get the 11-hydroxy. We still get delta 9 from it as well, but that's when we get the 11-hydroxy THC, which penetrates the blood-brain barrier into our brain and causes, people will say more high. I think sometimes it's more of a different high than you get with just delta 9 THC, but it's because it's metabolized through the liver, right? And that's really where the difference comes.
Thank you for that clarification. I will go to Pearson Kennedy Crosby with a question. Pearson?
So,
really loud, sir. Can you turn down your volume somewhat?
I don't know. Too much? Still?
That's better. Go ahead.
Cool. I apologize. What are some of the stigmas that mothers face when it comes to cannabis, and how do you believe that they should address them?
I'm happy to take that question first. So, you know, the stigmas and stereotypes abound still, they're out there. And I think that, you know, one of them, obviously, for a mother is that she's irresponsible if she consumes cannabis. That is a big stigma and stereotype. It's far from the truth based on the interviews that I've done and the women that I've spoken to, you know, for throughout all of my journalism career in cannabis. But, you know, they remain, those stigmas remain. Also, you know, just sort of lazy, apathetic, checked out, those kind of things. And, you know, I think that the truth is with cannabis that's somewhat dose dependent, and that, you know, with a larger dose, we can kind of check out a little bit. I think that, you know, most people would, you know, admit that to a certain degree, but, you know, with a lower dose, with a more moderate dose, many women tell me, and I find this myself with my own children, that, you know, I tune in better. So I'm actually like more attuned to them, more sensitive to their needs and their interests and, you know, their conversations. And so many moms that I interviewed told me that. So I think that these stereotypes that exist of, you know, it's irresponsible, it's lazy, it's unsafe, you know, you'll be checked out as a mom if you consume, and that is just not true. also, the fact is that a lot of people use cannabis as a productivity boost, as a creativity boost. Again, it's dose dependent, it's strain and product dependent. There's so many factors, and for people learning how to dial that in, it can be a little bit tough, but it's not a one size fits all, as we know. And there are so many ways to consume this plant, many of which are not psychoactive at all. So, I love psychoactivity, but it doesn't have a place in, every moment of my day either. So I think that, so I hope that answers the question.
It's a wonderful way to put it. Absolutely. Thank you.
Dr. Williams?
Yeah, so in our book, Courage in Cannabis, we launched a book in December where we got 18 authors that share how cannabis has changed their life. And so we have moms in the book. We also have adult children that were preparing cannabis for their mothers during their illness. And the one thing that really stood out, I think, for a lot of some of these stories that come together is that there is a religious component to this, that you cannot be a woman and use cannabis and be a woman of faith, whatever that may mean for you, right? And I think that was one of the reasons that I even got into writing this book in the first place, was because one of my first patients said, when I handed her card over, and she had tears, and I was, explained to me what's going on, and she's like, I feel like I can go to church now because I'm a patient. And so that in itself was so incredibly compelling to me. Even the thought that women are giving cannabis to their children, we have such an incredible responsibility, not just for our bodies, not just for the ability that we're able to have children and this child during pregnancy and lactation, but once we actually have these children on this earth, our responsibility towards them and how we raise them, we're critiqued and judged every day. And so there's one mom in the book that is a doctor that wanted to give really CBD, any form of cannabis, to her dying child with epilepsy. And where she was living, she needed to have a sign off for another physician and could not get it, period. Neurologist were turning her away, and the son is dying. He is now a thriving, happy, skiing child, that can now interact because one of her coworkers finally said, I don't even know anything about this cannabis thing, but I'll sign it because the alternative is really death, right? Another mom in the book her child had a brain tumor, highly active in her church. And she had to really choose her faith over her child. And every single time they went miles and miles and miles to this hospital to get, MRIs and CAT scan, this tumor is shrinking. So eventually, and the church was very involved in praying over this child. And so they were very involved in the process. Eventually, her church could not deny that cannabis was the best option for him. And so she was able to make a huge change in her community because of what she did. That's a huge responsibility. And so the book is Courage in Cannabis for a reason, because the courage that it takes to be in this space and take it on when there's naysayers all around is immeasurable.
Council Member Crosby, you wanted to follow up?
Yeah, not even, so this is just a comment. The responsibility along with being a mother, I'm a stay-at-home dad for the last 3 years, is incredible. It's just one of those things, just the weight that is put upon a person that welcomes new life and onto this earth and takes the responsibility of making sure that child gets to where he or she needs to, is just something I can never imagine, and it's incredible.
It really is. Well, ladies, this is a time where to please promote your books and what you have going on. We've kind of gone through our questions at this point. So I'll start with Dr. Williams. Thank you again for joining us. Michael Green, did you have a follow up before we close this out?
Yeah, I did. If I didn't just forget it, I was asking, I know that both women are mothers. So maybe just a brief thing about how their children and where they are in the cannabis community is authors and doctors, is an author and a doctor.
I don't know if I got
If that's
like
not too personal.
Ask
No.
that again, Michael. You broke up. Try that again. You're in a better spot.
Okay. Well, I'm under the, I know that both Dr. Williams and Danielle have children. So I'm wondering if there's anything they can feed us back about their own relationships with their children as cannabis has come into the equation.
Yeah,
Either
absolutely.
because of work or how they are.
Yes. So I have two girls, a 15 and a 17-year-old, which my 17-year-old's graduating high school. I did not know it was so stressful, just trying to, I thought, yeah, that in itself is a whole thing, right? Anyhow, but yeah, they saw me go from traditional medicine at the Cleveland Clinic and saw not just me going into the cannabis space, but being in a much more entrepreneurial space as well. I've done other little entrepreneurial efforts before, so that wasn't unknown to them, but obviously this was a lot larger. And they saw me taking on something that was not generally accepted. And so they definitely did raise an eyebrow in the very beginning, right? Because they were like, now what are you doing? But they definitely see me being a champion for patients. And they have absolutely, I think they think that like we're heroes in what we're doing, and to the point where I've had to tell my 17-year-old, can you not tell everyone that your mom is like a weed doctor? Because I go to the school musical and I got moms like tapping me on the shoulder, like, I know what you do. And I'm like, we're not in a drug deal. Like what's going on here, right? So, but I can't say, it's incredible to be proud of your children, but I don't think there's any gift more meaningful than when your children are proud of you. And so that's really what I've gotten to being in this space, and to know that they back me up in all my travel and craziness is really meaningful.
Thank you. Danielle.
Yeah, so my kids are 9 and 12 now. My daughter's younger, my son's older, and they were pretty young when I started getting into this space. And so, it's really just been their life. I mean, in terms of their understanding of what I do for my job is, yeah, Mama talks about cannabis. It's this thing that we can talk about with some people outside the house, and not with everybody outside the house, right? But I've worked to normalize it in our home in a way that also keeps them safe and lets them know that it's not for them at this point. And I do keep things locked and all that, but we talk openly about what the plant does for me, how I use it medicinally. I do use it for migraines. I do use it, for several different medicinal reasons, actually. And they also know that it's a mood changer or enhancement for me that helps me parent better. So, it has positive associations in our family. And I truly promote that. In the book, I have a whole chapter about talking to kids about cannabis. And again, my whole goal there is to promote responsibility and respect for the plant. And, we don't have to fearmonger and, demonize the plant in order to do that. Right. So yeah, that's I believe in changing the narrative for this next generation, because they can utilize it when they're old enough for a variety of reasons that we are all using it now for, in ways that could potentially be much more healthful for them than leaning on pharmaceuticals and leaning on other things, alcohol, etc. So it's something that I feel pretty passionately about, that kids are part of this conversation, as we move forward.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to go to
That's beautiful.
Council
Both of you.
Member.
Thank you for sharing.
Council Member Alburn. He had some questions to follow up with.
Well, first of all, ladies, I apologize for missing about the first half hour of the talk, but I've been pretty impressed with what I've heard. And as one of the pioneers of the cannabis education world here, I'm glad you're there. I mean, the whole idea when guys like me and NTN started this stuff decades ago was that somebody like you would come along. So I'm really glad you have. Thank you. But I do have some comments, questions about a few things that were said. I'm just wondering if either or one of you or all of you know about the research on cannabis in children done by Dr. Melanie Dreyer in Jamaica for NIDA. Are you guys familiar with that? Good, because I think that's something that I would like to have you stress in your talks. For those that don't know, this was a multi-decade study done by NIDA by Dr. Melanie Dreyer, a nurse, PhD, FAA, and a good buddy of mine. And what she found in essence was that women who had used cannabis during their pregnancy and then after the child was born, immediately after the child was born, that mother or the midwife gave that child a marijuana tea, a cannabis tea. First thing they had was a marijuana tea. These women in Jamaica are called Roots Daughters. If you want to look them up, they're part of the Rastafarian faith. But the point is, after a look at these kids from infancy to 10 years old, they did very, very well, if not better than their peer group who had no such treatment. So the thought is here is, these are hundreds of women, with really poor prenatal help and all, and they did wonderfully well, and so did their children. So it's something that I would recommend you pass on. It's a very important study, and of course it was done by NIDA, so that's why they didn't publicize it, because it was good. Wow, it said something good. Well, we can't tell anybody that shit. Doctor, I have one specific question for you. I might have misunderstood, but I don't get it. I believe you said in a suppository area, it would depend upon the part of the body that the suppository was placed in order to activate it psychoactively. If I heard that correctly, I don't understand, because I have lived now for 50 years with the understanding that the only way you can get psychoactivity out of a cannabis plant is to heat it to a considerable temperature, like 380 some degrees. So I'm wondering, I mean, have I got a message here of heat, or is it the oral mucosal that I'm missing, or what's the message there?
So when we're talking about inhalation and taking CBD, THCA, and then decarboxylating it, and then you decarboxylate it by heating it, and then you're inhaling it, and it's active, right? When we're talking about edibles, or that something that goes through your liver, or even suppositories, these are preparations that have already been decarboxylated. So they're already in their active form. So it doesn't have to be heated to be active. So that's even, or they've already been decarboxylated, however which way, in making the gummy. We see this with people make like cannabis butters. It's already been heated, and then they put, people make all sorts of stuff, right? And but it's already been decarboxylated. So that's why it can be active without being heated, because of the preparation's already been done. Now, what I was speaking about specifically was how just in the rectal system is a little bit different. I'm not as clear as vaginally if it works the same way, but I suspect that it could. But based on placement in the rectum, it depends on which aspect of the blood system it goes into. And that if it's high enough up, it's actually going to get into a place where it can actually be activated in your give a psychoactive effect. And if it's a little bit lower, then it misses that aspect of the blood system and does not get to that aspect. So placement is very important, and you can have all sorts of preparations. If it's already decarboxylated, it can be active. I hope that helps.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
So way up your ass, people. That's that's my takeaway. No, sorry, doctor. You know, we gotta have a bit of humor with this. Needless to say, you know, leave it to Dr. Osoli to come up. His major thing was coming up with a suppository. So my friend always said, leave it to the government. When they finally figured out something with cannabis, it would be something that they'd stick up your ass. So, you know, but of course, people have to also understand medically the majority of medications over in Europe are done rectally, whereas here in the United States, we tend to be the oral people. So it also depends on what part of the world that you're in, needless to say. So that's, Al, did you have any other follow-up questions?
No, thank you, ladies. It's very informative. Glad to have you come back sometime and do this again. We especially wanted to have a conversation that would be important to our female vets, our sisters. There's a lot of us out there, and so this I'm sure will be followed by them. And thank you again. It's very nice of you to come.
So then, Dr. Williams, please talk about your book and any upcoming things that you have or that you'll be on, or your Clubhouse show.
Absolutely. So I don't know. I feel like there's always something happening, right? But if you wanted to learn more about the stories that I had shared, definitely go to courageandcannabis.com. It's where you can see more about the book, as well as see more about our authors. And the book is also available on Amazon and I don't know, wherever, Barnes and Nobles and Walmart, you know, wherever they sell books, right? But if you want to learn more, as well as we're on Facebook and Instagram, and I will be seeing Michael J. Green here pretty soon for Patients at a Time. I'm very excited about this. I mean, I'm excited about it because it's such a great opportunity to really have in-depth conversations on this level with some of the top people in the cannabis space. And so it is June 9th through the 11th in Kansas City, Missouri. It's the subject is the endocannabinoid system and beyond. I believe I'll be really talking about that relationship with cannabis and opioids. So important to be able to have a better understanding about the good and the bad, how cannabis can help, and how it can help with the recovery as well as with maintaining sobriety. And so what I don't know, Michael, what else am I doing? I'm doing other stuff with you. What is going on? I feel like I'm always I'm kind of just following you around. We do a
You
club.
can do all kinds of things with me. What can I say?
We have so much fun. Every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, we do, it's on your Reclaim Your Wellness channel or club on Clubhouse, and it's all about courage and cannabis. We bring people that have amazing stories and write books, and Danielle, I would love for you to come on. And we talk about the stories and issues in cannabis. Stories motivate me in my medical practice. It's people and how they experience life is what really draws me in. And so to share cannabis stories, I think is inspiring and educational for others. So yes, that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Danielle.
Yes, I have been meaning to pick up Dr. Williams's book because I know some of the authors, including Joyce Gerber. I've been on her show, and yeah,
Yes.
I speak with her often on Clubhouse too. So I absolutely am going to put that on my list. And my book is called Weed Mom. It's got a long subtitle, but all you need to know is Weed Mom. It's on Amazon. It's also available through local bookstores if you ask for it. That's always a nice thing to support local businesses if you don't want to support the big A. And I can be found at Danielle Simone Brand on Instagram. Same thing for my website, DanielleSimoneBrand.com. I do a couple of live talks every week, or conversations. One is Sunday mornings in the Canmom High Society Clubhouse on the Clubhouse app. That's Sunday mornings from 9 to 11 Mountain Time. That's my time zone. But, we have people joining us from all over. And then I also do a Wednesday night show on an app called Relevant. You can just reach out to me. Anyone can reach out to me if they want to find those things. And and then one event that I'd like to talk about is next week, Wednesday. I'm having a Canna social, and it's all online. So women from all over the place can come. It's with a group called Tokeativity. That's like ativity, like positivity and toking together. So that's a lot of fun. And we're going to be talking about all things Canna.
Very good. Yeah.
Outstanding. Well, needless to say, thank you all very much for joining us today. It has been very informative, and again, you are definitely welcome back, the both of you, anytime. We'd love to have you and further the conversations. I'll pop onto your Clubhouse and check it out for sure. As well as we'll be recommending some books to some friends for the holidays, etc. So thank you all very much. So thank you, Dr. Bridget Williams, Danielle Simone Brand, our council members, Michael Crowitz, Gage Amsler, Brian Buckley, Al Byrne, Tony Landry, Wade Laughter, Michael Green, Pearson Kennedy Crosby, and Georgia Armstrong, who were here earlier as well. And a shout out to Amy. Sorry you couldn't make it. Much love. This has been the V.A.C. Roundtable number 36, so Women's Health and Cannabis. So we'll be back in 2 weeks. So you can check us out on our V.A.C. YouTube channel, Veterans Action Council YouTube channel, where this will be available and available for sharing and replaying. So thank you all very much. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.